first episode of the Coach's Corner, insights and inspiration from top trainers and experts throughout Asia and the world. So I'm your host, I'm Terence Clarke. Terry, call me what you want to. I'm a coach and trainer based in Shanghai. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with CJ Ng, who is a trainer and a coach based in Singapore. He is the author of Winning the B2B Sale in China, and just in general, a really good guy. So welcome, CJ. Thank you for joining me today. Let's sit back and relax. And CJ, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. And welcome to the first episode. Thank you. So CJ, you and I know each other for quite some time. You're a really experienced coach and trainer, many years of experience in China and Singapore, throughout Southeast Asia. And you wrote your book, which we can see in the background there, Winning the B2B Sale in China. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it?
Right. The book is actually a collection of different articles that I've written over the years. I've been in China since 2004 and left China when COVID began in 2020. So it's for 16 years of that time. There's been a collection of my articles, reflections, stories I've collected from my trainees and coachees. And one of the key things that I want to point out in the book is that selling in China, to a certain extent, yes, it's not how selling is over in the West, but at the same time, it is all not that much different as how it's being done internationally. There are some nuances that are particular to China, and there are some nuances that are applicable all around the world. So it's a matter of how we tweak the right techniques, the right approaches for the right occasion.
Okay. And CJ, in your great experience that you've had, the long experience you've had in China, what are some common mistakes that companies tend to make when they're trying to sell in China to both Western companies and to Chinese companies?
Well, again, it depends on the two different assumptions that Westerners tend to make. One is that in China, everything is about guanxi, right? The other assumption is in China, you can forget about guanxi. It's just, if you've got a great product, it sells. Right. Both are extreme ends and both are wrong, unfortunately. So in China, there is really a huge emphasis on relationship building. And the basis of relationship is not so much about the wining and dining. It's more about building trust with the customer. Trust in whether you're giving good suggestions, good solutions, and trust in that if you're a salesperson, are you able to solve issues, resolve issues when something goes wrong? So customers would like to have that before they buy from you. So that's the thing about selling. And yeah, in a way, if you have a great product, it sells, of course. But customers like to think about, can I trust you more as a salesperson, even though you have a great product? So that's one key distinction.
Okay, that's really interesting. I myself have been here a long time as well, and I've done sales and marketing. That's a really good insight on the trust. And from your experience, CJ, what are some ways that you can build trust? And this may be a silly question and a question that can't be answered, but second part of that question is, how long does it take to build the trust? Because, people are like, go and sell this now. You've got your targets, you've got your KPI, you've got to get it sold now. Go. So what are some of the ways we can do that?
Well, the thing about trust is that it's not an on-off switch. It's not like you have suddenly a lot of trust, although you could lose trust dramatically. Right. That trust is usually accumulated from time to time. So instead of thinking about how I'm going to sell this to you now, the salesperson in China, and probably anywhere in the world as well, goes in and find out, what is it about the customer that I can help make a difference? What is it about a customer that I can discuss with a customer and probe in a little bit more and co-create solutions that can help the customer achieve a better outcome? right?
Okay.
Or in a B2B sense, how can I help my customer sell better to his or her customer? So if the approach is about exploring ways on helping and adding value to the customer, of course, is not going to be getting very excited and have 100% trust in you, but it's a pathway to gradually build trust with you. And the good thing about B2B, well, good and bad, is that usually you don't sell or not sell. You don't sell or
Right.
lose the customer in the first contact. So you build enough trust so that you win enough to get to the next appointment, and until eventually, if you close, hopefully you got enough trust.
So talking about trust, CJ, and not just applying to China, but what sort of percentage, if there's a percentage you can put on it, do you think is the actual individual salesperson, their actual relationship with the client, or how the client feels about them? What percentage of that is important for the sale? So, for example, if you are selling software as a service, and you say, "Oh, I'm from Zoom," or I'm from Microsoft," and you think, "Oh, I've got this amazing company behind me. It doesn't matter what sort of salesperson I am." But I think the reality is. But in your experience, what do you think the percentage is?
Well, it's hard to put a number to that. Of course, if you work for a reputable company, it builds a lot of trust. But at the same time, there were studies that were done, not in China, but somewhere in the West, and it's global studies on about 80,000 customers all around the world. And the study asked the customers, what prompted you to make the final decision to choose who you want to buy from, which vendor to choose. So it's a whole list of brand, product quality, price, and a lot of others. 37% of the respondents chose salesperson.
Okay. Wow.
So if you think about it, well, you may come from a very reputable brand, but so does your competitor. So I have equal trust brand-wise with your brand that you are representing and those of the competitors. So both are great brands. That's great. So what else can I compare? Price, maybe if it's similar brand, similar positioning, it's going to be similar prices, a little bit different, but not much. Quality is going to be similar. And eventually it boils down to, if I'm going to buy from this vendor, this supplier again and again, if I want to go on the long-term working relationship and a partnership with this provider, which salesperson is the most likely I'd like to work for a longer term? So that's the logic behind customers thinking.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about cultural awareness when it comes to sales. Obviously, you're from Singapore, I'm from here. We've both been here maybe about the same amount of time. Chinese is one of your first languages. I do speak Chinese, and I understand China quite well. But from your perspective, as a real expert in the sales field, how important is it cultural understanding for doing business, not just in China for a foreigner or for a Chinese person, because obviously we have so many different regions of China as well. How important is the cultural understanding and awareness?
Well, again, I wouldn't say it's not important at all in terms of cultural differences. There definitely will be some cultural nuances. But at the same time, I'm not saying that cultural differences is going to entirely influence the outcome of the sale. Especially when I first came to China, despite that I'm ethnically Chinese, there's this huge difference between Singapore culture and Chinese culture. So there are cultural clashes here and there. And yes, at times it affected the sales, but other times I think it's also about how are you, again, approaching the customer, number one, with respect. Are you aware and sensitive towards the customer's needs and concerns? Or are you there just thinking only about yourself and thinking only about how to make the sale so that you complete the sales quota? So it's really about being customer centric. And the moment when you're customer centric, then even if there could be some cultural guffers, there could be some mistakes along the way, you can have a sense as in, oops, did I say something wrong just now? Did I ask the wrong question or did the wrong gesture? And even if you caught yourself doing the wrong things, you can always approach the client and say, hey, sorry, I didn't know that it was something that was a bit insensitive, or I sense that you seem to feel uncomfortable, right? And we can touch base on that with the customer, and in a way, most customers actually appreciate it in the sense that you are humble enough to owe up to certain mistakes, even though it may not be a big one, but you're humble enough to owe up to it, and they actually feel more comfortable working with someone who's able to be authentic about whether it's right or wrong in that situation.
Okay, and maybe you can guess the next question. Do you have any examples from all of your time in China, from the people you've trained and coached? Do you have any examples where there's been some cultural issues that have maybe caused some problems with the sale, or just in general?
Well, the thing about China, and especially in other parts of Asia, is that there seems to be certain communication that people want to be more indirect and more high contextual.
Yes.
So by indirect, I'll say that sometimes when customers don't feel comfortable saying something, right? Like, what's your budget for doing X? And customers don't feel comfortable, right? And in the Western approach, it will be to keep asking, right? What's the budget? If you give me a number. If I don't have a number, I can't work with that. In China, or even in other parts of Asia where the contextual meaning is even higher, like say, for example, Thailand or Indonesia, it's even more contextual. So we probably will need to use some other questions to kind of to hit from the side, so to speak. So we can always ask, for something like this, who did you buy from previously? So I'm not even asking about who else are you looking at, but who are you buying from previously? And even if we are asking for who are the competitors, so besides us, who else are you talking to? And again, Chinese Asian customers are less likely to be forthright as in, I'm looking for X, I'm looking for Y. But sometimes you can always ask, in terms of your search criteria, what will be some of the important criteria for you? Okay. Right. And we can even ask as a follow-up question, how do we measure up with someone else? Whoever you're looking for, how do we measure? And let us know if there's something that we can do. And of course, at this stage, customers can always say, oh yeah, we're looking for price. And as a salesperson, you can always say that, hey, thank you for letting us know about price. What else besides price? And we can always be a bit gentle and a bit kind of contextual in that questioning. Okay.
I mean, I love what you said there about the high context. And obviously, I'm from a Western country, which is pretty low context. Well, UK, America being the lowest context culture in the world, and Japan being the highest. And there's many. We don't have time to go into so many stories today, but there's many stories of when I first came to China and I was in manufacturing, as everybody was in that time, going to factories and just trying to do it the Western way. I didn't speak really any Chinese then either, and I just couldn't understand why things weren't getting done. I didn't know how to ask the right questions. And it's taken nearly 20 years to sort of be able to ask questions that work. And the Japanese have got a really, really lovely phrase, and it's called reading the air. So people are very indirect in Japan, highest context culture in the world. They say, read the air, and they grow up with this, so they know how to do it. So it can be quite, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying to be nice, or I'm trying to do this, or it's very interesting. I did some training on cross-cultural communication in Xi'an a couple of weeks ago. Some MBA students in a very large company who are going all over the world. It was very, very interesting. It was a really, really good session. Really enjoyed that.
I'm glad you mentioned about that 20 years, taking 20 years to see that. Because one thing about being a salesperson is always be learning, because you never know what kind of customers is going to show up. And they have tons of experience behind you, but the guy that's coming up in front of you can be totally different from anyone you've ever seen.
Exactly. And it's all about being prepared as well. I mean, I've seen in my sort of career, salespeople have just been quite cocky. I've got this great product, so I'm great, and they've gone in prepared and can't ask this question. And if you don't know the answer to a question, there's ways to manage that. But then they've gone in very cocky and not prepared whatsoever. So I always say 3 Ps: prepare, prepare, prepare. Right? you can't be over prepared at all.
Absolutely.
So CJ, as a sort of master trainer and a sales expert, what are some of the successful strategies you've seen companies that are coming into China? So you work with a lot of the big multinationals. What sort of successful strategies have you seen them use for sales?
Well, in terms of foreign companies who actually did well in China, it's not so much about the sales techniques. It's about who they hire,
right,
and can they trust who they hire. So it's a two-part answer, in the sense that foreign companies are very particular about being compliant. Listen, you don't give bribes, you don't give kickbacks, and all that. And some foreign companies unfortunately pick the wrong guys, because if a salesperson, that salesperson can be a top sales with a certain company, but if that salesperson got the sale in mainly by giving kickbacks or doing some non-compliant things, it will be a total cultural mismatch, or even a policy or values mismatch with that foreign company, and it's going to fail. So it's a matter of really selecting the right person with the right character, with the right values, maybe not even with a very strong sales ability, but someone whom you can trust, and put that person in charge to build, whether it's the sales team or the distributorship network in China. So that's one thing I've observed, and of course, Western companies tend also, I think it's an unconscious bias, to hire people with good English skills. When if you're in industrial product selling in China, the guys who are going down to the factories in some far-flung places may not have the best English skills, right? So again, it's how Western companies need to be aware of some of the biases, and are they able to overcome those and look for the kinds of the right people that can help them grow the business.
And I like what you said there, CJ, about people going up to far-flung places. And I remember a company I was working for years ago, and I was running the marketing for them, and they wanted to have the same approach for something in Beijing, something in Shanghai, and something in Guangzhou. And these are the big cities, but they're so different. And as you know, and then when you go into the sort of the sort of hinterland, and you go inner China, it's even more different, and things are different everywhere there. So I always say to people, you cannot take a one one thing fits all approach to China. I mean, it's there's one language, Putonghua, it's the common language, but still the way that language is used, and the way people eat meals. Like Shanghai, we're eating at 5 o'clock. Somewhere else, they might have dinner later, right? And it's getting used to even small things that don't affect sales, but things that you need to be prepared for, which I find that when people are having cultural training coming into China, things like this aren't covered, I think.
Sure, definitely.
So, CJ, another thing that has come up quite a lot, or when we're talking to clients around training, they say, oh, we've got these sales guys who've been with us for 5, 10, 15 years, and they just don't want to go prospecting. They just they've got this one client who's 30% of their business. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we overcome that?
Right, and yeah, it's a big issue in China, where a lot of experienced salespeople they kind of have a very high opinion about themselves, because the sales figures are great, but they don't. What they didn't realize is they came into the picture, they came into the job at a time when there are like very few competitors out there, and now there are lots with faster turnaround times, lower prices, more attentiveness to customers, and so on. So they're under pressure to get more customers, and to make things worse, the existing customers are also very much tempted to try someone else, or the business of their existing customers are shrinking, and they may not be buying as much. So it's a tough situation, and there is no straightforward answer. generally, what I do observe is companies hire new salespeople to try to make to try to business develop newer
Right.
customers
Right.
instead of relying the older ones, and hopefully the old ones can generate enough sales from existing customers to meet quotas. So generally, that is the case. It's really challenging to try to change old salespeople, both from the company's point of view as in how to position them, and also from the existing older, more experienced salesperson, how whether they're motivated enough to change their ways and try something new and do something new consistently. So most companies just put them separately and manage the new salespeople as a separate team, so to speak.
This leads me right on to my next question, actually, CJ. So how do you think companies can effectively or best train and develop the sales team, or any team, right, with any teams within a company, to be successful here in China?
Well, I think before we even talk about the sales training, the company will need to think about what is the ongoing prevalent sales strategy. So the sales training will be something that supports the sales strategy. So just to give an example, I work with two IT companies. Both have operations, they're American, and both have got operations in China. And both wanted to go from selling boxes to selling subscription. So you're not buying a box, but you're subscribing to the box and whatever software that goes into the box. And if you love it, you'll increase your subscription, just like Netflix, right? So that's the model they're doing. So the first one was more or less more successful in the sense that before they do the changeover, they had a kickoff, and the training in the kickoff is, what do we expect when this D-Day arrive, and this is what we will be turning to and why we are doing that. And once D-Day arrive, they have more training on, okay, so we are shifting to a different sales model, and this is what we need to do. So the skills are there. And then the next phase is, but our sales managers are still managing people as if they're selling boxes. They're still looking at, what's the number for the week. So we need to change our mindset. We need to change our approach. So they train them to coach salespeople, and so on and so forth. So it's not a perfect solution. Some of which are like they kind of sense that they need to fix things, and they are on the backtrack. But generally, they're kind of plodding along in the right direction. So that works. The second company, well, they tried since 2019, before the pandemic, they tried to do something similar. And they have been making nice, great corporate videos saying that, no, we are going to go on a subscription model as well. Until today, a lot of the salespeople are still unaware that the headquarters are trying to go into that direction. The sales training materials are all about, how do we sell subscription? How do we become more flexible and using design thinking in sales and be creative and coming up with solutions? Well, the salespeople are still, right now, they're still selling boxes, and they have no idea whatsoever that is the future direction of the company.
Okay. So, CJ, obviously you run a really great company called Directions Consulting, where you do corporate training. You're also a coach, and of course we see an author in the background there. So how important do you think in general for all sorts of companies is ongoing learning and development, or training and development for the company and also the employee?
Well, I think it's, again, we are looking at different companies doing differently, and they're all over the charts. Some companies are still running training like it's an open enrollment seminar workshop internally. So they'll say, okay, let's have sales training on certain day, let's have negotiations training on other days, and leadership training on other days, and blast it out to all employees and whoever wants to sign up for it. And there are, on the other end of the spectrum, there are companies that say, no, we need to solve a certain problem. And to solve that problem, besides training, there are other elements to it. and how we'll like to have training to be part of that solution to solve the problem, and what areas should the training address to solve that problem. So there are different the different people, different companies doing things all over the spectrum. Now, obviously, I mean, we definitely like to see companies who are able to, or participants who are able to make use of the knowledge and convert it into actions and make their jobs, make their work, make their performance better. That's what we love. So we definitely will want to go for the later. But at the same time, we do understand that everything that's customized, that are bespoke, tends to be longer. And all the work that is done is only done for that one occasion. It may go for multiple runs if we're lucky, but it's focused on that one singular purpose. So it's sometimes it's a hard balancing act for consulting companies like us to say that, who are our customers, and which ones should we spend more time and resources to help them what it calls upskill their people. Okay.
Great. CJ, thank you so much. So great insights and experience today, CJ. Thank you. Your book and advice, I think, will be a great use to a lot of people out there. I will add all of your contact details and where to get your book on the finished version of the video. Thank you so much for joining me and being my first guest on this ongoing video series. And anything that you would like to say, a quick plug for your own business before we finish?
Well, if there's any need to find out how to improve your selling skills, negotiation skills, customer handling skills, well, feel free to drop us a line. We've got tons of free resources, and we're happy to share with our audience.
Brilliant. CJ, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of Chinese New Year. We still have a few more days here. I'm not sure what it's like in Singapore, but thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And just have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.